Well, hi again, everyone. Patrick Pfingsten here. Welcome to the Illinoize podcast. I'm Patrick Pfingsten. I write the Illinoize political newsletter, which you can get at the Illinoize. That's with a Z.com. Coming up today, it's all talk of the end of the state legislative session. We'll talk through the state budget, some other issues and social issues and cultural issues that are hanging around out there. We'll be joined by the House Republican lead budget negotiator, such as it was, in that sense, Representative Norine Hammond from Macomb in Western Illinois, and we'll also talk to Democrat Dave Vella, a moderate from Rockford, on his impressions, his defenses as well of what's in the state budget, and how Democrats succeeded or maybe not so much this spring legislative session that ran a week longer than expected, but did finish up right before Memorial Day. We took Memorial Day weekend, got a little sleep, and we're back and better than ever. So I think the main issue that process is always the silly, stupid thing that keeps coming up in budget discussions and really anything that happens in Springfield, and it was no different this year, but we saw some relatively disingenuous arguments, I thought, where Democrats were angry that Republicans didn't vote for the budget, though never allowed Republicans to have a role in crafting the budget, which doesn't make a ton of sense. You could see the animosity kind of bubble over a little bit in the early hours of last Saturday morning, the 27th, when House Republican leader Tony McCombie and House Speaker Chris Welch kind of traded some shots on the floor. Here's a couple of clips.
Although we may not always agree, our caucus did not want you to go it alone. That was your choice. So I extend again over the summer and coming months as we approach a very busy veto. Bring us to the table. We are problem solvers. Use our knowledge and benefit from our talents. We are here to govern. Speaker, before it's too late, I ask you to put aside political agendas and do what's right.
But the speaker, Chris Welch, had a fiery response.
I ask, will Republicans, will at least you put the leaders on a budget? Isn't that a fair question to ask? That's a fair question to ask. Work with us and put some votes on the board. Put it on the board. Put it on the board. Don't just talk. Walk with us. Walk with us. I'm proud of the process that we put in place.
So, of course, the budget passed on partisan lines, and we'll have more on that. The McCombie Welch squabble and who's telling the truth. I'll let you make your own decision, but we'll have a little more context, another clip, and some words from Representative Hammond on that coming up here shortly. But the budget passed. It's $50.6 billion. Includes about $550 million for the health benefits for immigrants, for illegal immigrants or undocumented immigrants, whatever you want to, whatever term you want to use, depending on your political leanings. The issue with that number that Republicans claim is that it's half of what's actually expected in projections from the governor's office of management and budget and the agency that runs the program. So essentially, Democrats say they're giving the governor the ability and the tools through rulemaking, through trying to capture some other funds, maybe even putting some fees in case that they can cut that program in half, 1.1 billion to 550 million. Though I think there's a lot of skepticism from Republicans that's actually they're actually going to be able to make that happen. Another concern from Republicans was that the pay raises that were passed for workers in developmentally disabled facilities was they asked for a 4% raise, they got a 2.5% raise, and they hadn't gotten a raise in years. They're barely making enough to make ends meet. But they only got the funds authorized for half the year, so it doesn't even kick in until January. So it's not a ton of solace for frontline healthcare workers who are desperately in need of a raise. There's also an upcoming budget negotiation or contract negotiation between the state and AFSCME, where it's expected that the AFSCME workers, state workers, are probably going to get a raise to the tune of $200 to $300 million in the next year, and there's no money accounting for that in the budget. So either they're going to have to hope that the Pritzker folks strike a hell of a deal, or they're going to have to come back and find the money somewhere. So there are definitely some real points of contention between the two sides. This isn't just, Democrats saying we got everything right and Republicans saying you got everything wrong. There's some actual wedges here. The questions I think will have to play themselves out, and obviously there was a pay raise that's part of the budget for legislators. That's a cost of living adjustment, but it's actually over the 5% that you're supposed to max out at for a COLA. So Republicans are arguing that it's an unconstitutional pay raise. So we may see that end up in court at some point. It's really an issue that's going to cause some frustration, I think, on both sides, especially as we try and shake that out. And it's a tough political move on both sides as well. So thanks for taking time. Let's get into this. We'll have Representative Dave Vella from Rockford, a Democrat, here in a few minutes, but we'll start with House Republican budgeteer, the representative from Macomb, Norine Hammond, who we spoke to Friday morning. We're pleased to be joined now by the Republican budget negotiator in the Illinois House, State Representative Norine Hammond from Macomb in Western Illinois, someone I've known since then Representative Jason Barrickman, when I worked with him when he went to the House in 2011. You guys were basically next door neighbors in the Stratton megalopolis. So
we were seatmates, actually.
So appreciate you taking some time, Representative, and good to talk to you. So this was your first budget cycle that you dealt with the budget, that you were the Republican negotiator. What's your takeaway?
Well, I would say most importantly, Patrick, my takeaway is disappointment. As the House Republican budgeteer, we were not included in any of the budget discussions. We had asked numerous times and had been promised numerous times that we would have meetings with the fellow budgeteers, but that never came to fruition. And so I would say disappointed. However, at the end of the day, when you look at the budget and some of the games that were played with it, it's understandable that we were never going to be part of it.
Let me ask you about that really quick, because Speaker Welch did an interview with WTTW, and we'll get the clip.
Regardless of our weekly meetings, Speaker Welch, you gave a false hope for a new day. The House Republicans were denied participation in many things, but most importantly, this year's budget process.
Is this a case of to the victor go the spoils, or can you give an example of something in the budget that was contributed via GOP input?
Well, first of all, let me say that that's not a truthful statement. She was performing for her caucus, performing for folks back home in her district. The reality is, I met with her weekly since the beginning of session. And we also had Republicans as a part of our working group process. The budget was being worked on in a very bipartisan way. About 2 weeks ago in one of our weekly meetings, I asked the leader if Republicans were actually going to put a vote on the budget. And I actually specifically said, can you at least allow your leadership team to vote on the budget? After that, sometimes meetings that were twice, thrice a week ended. She never got back to me in response to my question. The first time that I found out that they were going to vote against the budget was when they voted against the budget.
What actually happened from your perspective?
Well, first and foremost, I will tell you that Leader McCombie does not lie. She is one of the most honest and forthright legislators you're going to find in the Capitol. And she did have weekly meetings, at least, with Speaker Welch. And oftentimes they talked about when are we going to be included in the budget. But there was no negotiations about the budget between the speaker and Leader McCombie. So no, she did not lie. She asked time and again, when will we be included? Oh, it's coming. It's coming. We're just not ready for you yet.
She essentially said, though, that that the speaker asked her to put votes on before you all negotiated anything, right?
Correct. At one of their last meetings, he said, so you want to be included? How many votes are you going to put on it? And she said, I can't commit my members to put votes on something that we haven't even seen. And I think that's understandable across the board.
So Republican complaints about this budget, and let's be fair, it's partisan. You know, there are always partisan fights in Springfield, and Republicans are going to oppose what Democrats do, and Democrats are going to oppose what Republicans do. But you specifically called this budget full of tricks and gimmicks. Democrats say it's balanced. So what's missing here?
So they can claim that it's balanced all they want, but the fact remains that we will have to see another supplemental in order to sustain this budget as it was passed. And that's because there are lots of shuffling of funds in this budget. So there's 1.5 billion coming out of GRF that is going into the state cure fund for what is being referred to as pandemic related purposes. We are yet to see what those ongoing pandemic related purposes are. There's also a transfer of about $425 million into the Build Illinois Bond Fund. We are assuming, and I think it will come to fruition that we are right, that is to fund more pork projects for the Democratic caucuses in both the House and the Senate. There's also the CPPRT transfer, and that's about $700 million.
That's personal property replacement tax,
Correct.
which you all have said is going to cost local governments some 15% of their funding, right?
Absolutely, it will. The Democrats will tout that we gave an increase in the local government distributive funds from 6.1% to 6.4%. And that's down from the original statutory agreed upon 10% from years ago. But when we see this $700 million in the personal property replacement tax get clawed back, we will see about a 15% reduction on our communities.
One of the big issues that you all put complaints about or issued complaints about was the health insurance program, Medicaid style health insurance for undocumented immigrants, and I think it's important to be clear that that's different than people who are like asylum seekers, because that's a different federal program. Um, the Democrats say that even though they only budgeted essentially half of the expected cost for the next fiscal year, that they gave Governor Pritzker and his administration the tools to keep spending in check. Do you disagree with them when they say that?
I think that what they've done essentially is they have shoved this off on the governor. So rather than the Democrat caucus and the Democrat budgeteers making the tough decisions on how to handle this program, they punted that to the governor and said, "You own this. You make these decisions." And so now it's on the governor. He claims that he can do this within about a $550 million cost, down from the $1.1 billion. I really don't know exactly how he's going to do that. There are tools that can be used with copays and premiums and making some decisions on what healthcare is not available. But all of this is being done while at the same time, Patrick, we're not fully funding a lot of the areas of healthcare for our citizens that we so desperately need, and in particular for our DD communities that they should be getting a significant amount of money for their caregivers, about a $4 raise for those that care for this population. But instead, the Democrats only did a $2.50 raise.
There's an argument, though, and I think it's a fair argument from Democrats on this program that undocumented immigrants are coming here, whether we like it or not, and they're going to use our hospitals, they're going to use our infrastructure. Why not try to lessen the blow on the front end of healthcare than the far more expensive back end of healthcare? And I think, and I don't want this to devolve into national political BS, because that's not the game we play. But and where I come from politically, but there's been a disturbing trend among Republicans that there just seems to be a level of xenophobia, may be the only word to use, is that we don't like them because they're here. Is this just a matter of you being, not you specifically, but Republican voters being specifically anti-immigrant?
Oh, absolutely not. Absolutely not. And I think that the message does get lost. You are absolutely right. For me personally, and I think for many of my colleagues, a better approach to this is to have the tools in place and go from that level, and how to care for these folks, what benefits will be available to them, where the benefits will be available to them, and roll the program out appropriately. That was not the case with this program at all. And when it was expanded to the most current population, it was estimated that the cost would be $200 million. Well, obviously, $1.1 billion is a far cry from $200 million. And so I think the better approach would have been to have had all of the protocols in place and know exactly how we can take care of these folks and what we can afford.
Is there anything in the budget Republicans are happy with, or are you just no across the board?
No, absolutely. And I think, Patrick, we saw some things when the governor did his introduced budget in February that many of us were on board with. And certainly that was a a better focus on early childhood, maintaining the EBF at $350 million a year. There are a number of things. The $100 million increase to the MAP grant, so that all of our students can actually get their MAP grants. All of those are huge. And so there are some great things in this budget, but there are some real poison pills here, and not the least of which is another raise for legislators.
Let me ask you about that, because it definitely, and I've actually been a guy that has argued over the years that the legislators should be paid more so that we can get better people, successful people to run. But after pushing a pay increase through in January, and you saw the story in the newsletter this week where you guys alleged that these were essentially unconstitutional pay increases. Is there any justification, at least from a PR perspective, or is this just, sometimes it seems like, when you've got super majorities in both houses, you can do whatever the heck you want and it doesn't matter. But is there any justification for this in your mind?
No, absolutely not. Particularly coming off a pay increase in January. This was just more piling on, and doing this because you can, because you have the numbers.
What about the Invest in Kids program? This is the school choice tax credit, not even a voucher program, which a lot of conservatives had rallied behind. The argument from Democrats, and obviously there's the support of teachers unions out there, and that's played a big role politically. But why don't we just make our public schools better? It seems like it's, instead of trying to give one kid a lifeboat, why don't we try and give all kids a better shot?
Well, and I think in a perfect world, that's where we would be, Patrick. And we have great teachers, and make no mistake about it. We have great teachers. We have great administrators, but they also have to have some backup from home. If they're giving homework to the kids and they go home and they go out to play or whatever it is they do, and they don't do their share of the work, and the parents or caregivers aren't working with them to get that done, that's going to be a losing battle. But this Invest in Kids program, it was designed at $75 million, and the fact is that there's only $18 million invested in it. So it's not a huge sum of money to the state, and I, for one, think that it would be better if we look at it, if in fact they're going to do away with it, then look at it at a phase out. But that child that's in the first grade that has this scholarship for Invest in Kids, they should be assured that they're going to have that at least through 8th grade. So looking at the program in those ways, I think is a better approach than just saying we're doing away with it.
Representative, before we let you go, I think there's a feeling, whether it's among Republican legislators, Republican voters, people who observe things at the Capitol, that Republicans essentially are an afterthought. Do you all have a plan, whether it's politically, whether it's legislatively, to make yourselves relevant again, especially with 40 members? Because I've had so many people say to me this spring, it just doesn't matter what Republicans say. So how do you get in the game?
And I would disagree with those folks, Patrick. We can do math, and while we only have 40 members, it takes 60 votes for us to pass something that's important to the folks in our communities. We were fairly successful, not as successful as we would have liked to have been, but we were fairly successful on a lot of our bills this year. And so I think if you look at it from that perspective, you don't get so doom and gloom on it. But you also have to keep in mind that we have to grow our caucus. We have to be more focused, more inclusive, and I think that under the leadership of Leader Macomb, that's exactly where we're headed.
Representative Norine Hammond, Republican from Macomb, the Republican House budget negotiator, the budgeteer in Springfield parlance. Representative, I appreciate your time. Appreciate your help the last few weeks, and hopefully you get a little bit of time to unwind after the stress of the last few weeks.
Patrick, I appreciate your opportunity and appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Thanks to Representative Norine Hammond for joining us. Appreciate her taking time and walking through her positions and thoughts on the budget and the end of the legislative session, and being frank on a couple of issues too, especially regarding her party and immigration. So let's move to the Democratic perspective. All right, let's get the Democratic perspective on the state budget, the end of the legislative session, and where we are today. We're happy to welcome State Representative Dave Vella. He's a Democrat from Rockford in his second term. Just started his second term in January and his third state budget. Representative, you are one of the post-Madigan legislators. So you can't really go back to the days of Democrats being called mushrooms. How do you look at this budget process, if you will, and how you all have accomplished passing a budget, and we'll get into details, but how you all accomplished it, especially under the spending and revenue pressures that we're seeing this year?
So first of all, thank you for having me here. I really appreciate it. It has been, and now this is my third budget, and every year it has become more and more open, I think, to not only to Democrats, but to Republicans. Chris Welch, I think, has probably, again, I was never under Madigan, but Chris Welch has a very open and inclusive take on the budget process. And most recently, Jahan Gordon Booth has really done a great job of bringing us into the fold as the process goes on.
So I talked to a lot of Democrats and legislators who are kind of on the rank and file through the process. And essentially, a lot of what I heard in the weeks leading up to final passage of the budget was, we don't know what's going on. It's all happening in a back room somewhere. Was it in a back room, or what role did you as a rank and file Democrat get to play in crafting what turned out to be this 3,500 page emails?
So there's always going to be people in the back room discussing things, because you have the governor's office with his ideas, the Senate with their ideas, and us and our ideas. However, at least in the House side, we had our appropriations committee. I was on the higher ed appropriations committee, which was actually very important this year because of all the things we did with higher ed, and what we did, and the hearings we had, and the advice we had filtered up through the appropriations chair to Jahan. So yeah, I think we had some say in it. Obviously, when it comes down to any negotiation, I was a criminal defense attorney for 20 years. Any negotiation has to be, between a smaller amount of people. But we had a say in what was going on, but we weren't. Obviously, we didn't see the budget until it was done, and sometimes it takes a while, which is why we took extra time this time.
All right, here's the $50 billion question. Is it balanced? The Republicans argue, and I think these are fair arguments, whether you're Republican, Democrat, or somewhere in between, that you guys are praying that the governor can cut half the cost out of the migrant health insurance program, that you don't take account for an AFSCME contract, that there's potential cuts to PPRT, that there are issues in here that your budget does not account for. Is it balanced? Does it account for the things that state government will be spending on?
I believe it does. So just to back up that a little bit, the HBA, or the health insurance for undocumented, we gave the governor we budgeted a certain amount of money, let's just say half of what initially they thought it was $1 billion, and we gave them the tools to kind of put reins around where this is going to be. Keep in mind that people are here, okay? They're coming to the state of Illinois. They're going to be going to the emergency rooms anyway, and that cost is what's called fee for service, which would cost us even more money. This system actually will, I believe, save us money and we, as I say, through the rules process, gives them the ability to make sure that we do not go over budget in relation to HBIA. In relation to the PPRT, that is something that has come up. I know we gave another $100 million for LGDF, which was the Local Government Distributive Fund. We've put a lot of money in appropriations to individual communities. So I don't know that the PPRT, and again, I talked to Rockford, which is a community that really does need as much resources as possible. And the PPRT was not something that was high on their list. LGDF was bigger, and we knocked LGDF another half a point, which was a considerable amount.
I don't have it pulled up, but your mayor, Tom McNamara, was pretty critical of the legislature for not adding to the full LGDF, Local Government Distributive Fund, that hasn't been whole in a few years. The speakers made it clear that it wasn't going to be whole. The money wasn't there. If I believe, maybe I'm paraphrasing here, but I believe the Mayor McNamara called it stealing from local communities. Do you disagree with him?
Well, I understand he has the city of Rockford to worry about, and I have the 68th district to worry about. I can tell you that I fought tooth and nail to get to 10%. We didn't get to 10%. We did raise it, and it's going to keep getting raised every year as long as I'm down there. This was something, to digress a little bit. I've only been down there for 2.5 years. I feel like every time I turn over a rock, we're trying to fix a problem that was made 20 years ago. LGDF probably should have been given to the cities, and for whatever reason, the prior legislatures had not given it all there. It is moving that way. Every year we have a budget, we bring it up, and it keeps going up. I understand the frustration that he has, but I just know that we will get there.
Do you believe that the legislature is handling our dollars effectively? I mean, this budget is probably the first one since the financial crash that state revenue is actually expected to decrease, and all we heard about through this legislative session from a lot of your party was what new programs do we support? What programs do we expand? What new programs does the governor want? Doesn't this time, when revenues are projected down, when we're staring a recession straight in the face, doesn't that make it a good argument for cutting spending instead of launching into new programs?
So we are looking at a budget of $50 billion, but it's my understanding, at least from COGFA and Gambi, we're looking at revenues of $50 billion. So that's why I think it's a balanced budget. However, I understand that a small recession could be on the way. I'm a believer in, and I've always been a believer in, you can cut, but that's not gonna bring more money in. You need to grow your workforce. You need to grow. You get people on board to bring jobs here. You need to do things to attract people to the area. So we're making college cheaper. We're putting in early child education, put better into our schools so people want to come here with their kids. And we put a lot of money, $400 million in the last as a business fund to bring businesses here, and that's going to start getting fruit here pretty soon. I'm a believer in you have to grow. You can't cut, right? And if we keep cutting, we're just going to end up in a bad place. That's my belief.
What's the feeling in your caucus about the Invest in Kids program? Republicans made a real stink about it. That it wasn't renewed. It hasn't been renewed yet. Whether you're pro school choice, whether you want to just keep pumping money into public schools, everybody wants public schools to succeed, but we've seen that there, whether it's in Chicago or Rockford or in a lot of places that public schools aren't getting it done for everybody. Is this a program that Democrats should reauthorize?
I would say so. In relation to our caucus, it's tough. I myself are in favor of the Invest in Kids Act. I would vote to authorize it. But there are some problems with it, right? So some of the money does go to schools that does not share the value of the state of Illinois. There are some people with very extreme religious views or very extreme social views. But I do believe we can find a way to put guardrails around it so the money goes to the private schools. My belief is every kid deserves a good education. Some school districts are great, some aren't great, some need the help of private schools, some don't. And I think we have to make sure that every community, Rockford is different than Barrington, is different than Bloomington, and they should be treated differently. So that's why I think Invest in Kids should be authorized. Just to be clear, though, it was said many times that we killed Invest in Kids. It's gone. It's not gone. It doesn't sunset until December. So I believe that there is discussions going forward with the Invest in Kids and also the leadership to try to, push the sunset out a little longer.
Which, of course, would be halfway through the school year. So, I mean,
yeah,
it makes it very awkward for
yes.
families.
That was, by the way, I just want to say that was I was not involved in that. That was again from the Madigan Rauner era. But doing it in the middle of the year, I think, was just horrible because it puts kids, kids that I've talked to in my district in a situation where they don't know where they're going to be in the second half of the year. So one of the things I'm pushing in this, in the fall is get a deal done so these kids feel at least some sense of security. I mean, I don't want a kid going into his senior year to have to leave halfway through because they can't afford it.
Mm-hmm. I do want to ask about legislative pay raises because, again, that's one of the things people have noticed in here, and it's tough. And listen, as a guy who comes from the center right, I've actually argued that the legislators should be paid more because then it means we'll get better people who are willing to give up their current life or quality of life or whatever that would and actually go through the hell that it is to run for office. But there are concerns here that you guys just gave yourselves a pay increase in January. The House Republicans argued that this raise is over 5%, so that it's technically unconstitutional. When someone reads in the Register Star or they read our newsletter or hear on the radio that Dave Vella voted himself another pay increase, how do you defend that, especially in a place like Rockford where there's plenty of economic uncertainty or just anywhere where inflation has made our dollar go less far than it has before?
Sure. I will say this. I have quit my job, my full-time job, to do this. I took a pretty substantial pay decrease because this was something that it was a family thing for me. It was important for me to do this job. Now, that being said, it's my understanding from speaking to our legal counsel, because that was something I was worried about, that the courts have told us we have to give a COLA to the legislature, just like everybody else. It was my understanding in the previous administration, any raises or cost of living was declined for the last, I think they was told 20 years. I don't know that for sure, that they haven't had a pay raise in a long period of time. What I'm being told is this was the legal means of keeping up with the judicial ruling. The amount, that Leader McComb brought up about whether it was constitutional or not constitutional, I don't know. I'm actually trying to do research myself to figure out what the truth of it is. I tell you that I trust our legal team and I believe it's constitutional, or they wouldn't have put it in there.
Before I let you go, Representative, and I appreciate your time and thanks for walking through your perspective on these issues.
Sure.
What are you proud of? I mean, obviously, a lot of this is you guys passed the budget, so you've got to defend what you passed. But what are you proud of? What are you pointing to that said, yeah, we didn't do everything perfect. There are issues in there. We're going to try and fix them. But here's what I'm proud of.
Sure. There's little things, allowing, the police more money, allowing them more authority to go out and, fight crimes. The broader issue, that the reason that I ran, the thing that really gets me going is education. I'm very proud that we're going to start kids early in pre-K, and going to make it easier for them to go to college or go to vocational training. We put a lot of money into vocational training. Basically, my belief is, again, growth. We can only do so much, but the thing we can do is our kids and educate our kids. If we educate our kids, give them the ability to think, give them the ability to work, then our people will want to come. And I'll tell you, I spent a lot of my time in the off season trying to get businesses to come to my area. And one of the things they like about our area is we have good vocational training, and that we value work. The amount of money we put in, and the amount of time we put into early child education, the equitable funding model, more money for colleges, more money for vocational training, that is the thing that I'm most proud of, because that's why I'm here. I came here for education, and if we can get our education up to the snuff that I want it to be at, I think we're just going to keep growing.
You're generally regarded, and we'll let you go on this. You're generally regarded as more on the moderate side of things.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Your caucus has definitely moved to the left over the last 8 or 10 years. Even preceding you. I remember when I first broke in, to covering politics in the late 2000s, that the House Democrats were almost center left. Barely center left, because Madigan himself wasn't a progressive ideologue. How do you, as a moderate, and I think it's safe to say you voted along party lines for the most part. How do you say to your, whether it's suburban or city or definitely more progressive members, how do you say to them, guys, let's check the brakes a little bit, because it doesn't play like that in Rockford or Peoria or Champaign?
Well, I think you have to be frank with them. You have to say, first of all, that's not what I'm hearing, right? What you are hearing in Old Town in Chicago or in Southern Illinois is not what I'm hearing. And then I talk about my experiences, right? Again, I worked in the schools as a criminal defense attorney. I worked in the criminal justice system. I saw what I thought was moved things forward. And also, I think, for at least from my perspective, what I try to say is, it's not necessarily about an issue. It's just about good governing. So let's just make sure our decisions are about good governing and not any specific issue.
Representative Dave Vella. Representative, thanks so much for the time. I appreciate the good conversation, and enjoy your summer away from Springfield, because it's been a long last few weeks, hasn't it?
Yes, it has. Yes, it has.
All right. Representative, thanks so much.
Thank you very much. Have a good day.
So if you're watching this on YouTube, you see different shirt. It's because we record most of this on Friday, but we recorded with Representative Vella on Thursday. So just in case you have continuity problems with our video, thanks to Representative Vella for his time and for his conversation. And obviously the complaints and the frustration and the discussions are going to keep going on a state budget. They always do. Republicans need to make themselves relevant. And the question is, do you do that by trying to win elections, which they've done a pretty pitiful job of in recent years? Or do you actually, in your super minority, do you try and work with the Democrats and put votes on what essentially your members and your staff and your constituents are going to believe is a bad budget, so that you can try and get some table scraps? And that's the no-win situation that Republicans in the House and Senate find themselves in right now. And that's no fun for them. And, when I worked on Senate staff and we had 19 members, it was agonizing to try to get anything done. So it's a real challenge for Republicans to make themselves relevant as time goes on, especially as their numbers keep dwindling down to 40 in the House and 19 in the Senate. So before we let you go, we wanted to just take a moment to mention the passing of Todd Meisch, the president and CEO of the Illinois Chamber of Commerce, who died Thursday. And we had a story in the newsletter Friday morning with some friends and colleagues who were remembering Todd. And called him a giant in the Capitol, a real leader in business and on fiscal issues, who kind of ruffled some feathers over the years, and was a good guy, a really good guy, who I've known for many years. He was actually the second guest ever on this podcast last August, and I went back and listened to that this morning, and saw that he had a relatively interesting perspective for where we are today, as numbers were starting to shape up, almost a year ago for the budget that just got passed. And I wanted to share a little piece of that conversation with you that kind of gives you a little bit of a Nostradamus feel. We've also had more revenue than ever before, $50 billion last year. That number is expected to go down this year.
Mm-hmm.
Do you believe state government is in a position that it's ready to deal with what may be coming?
If left to their own devices, without people that watch your show, without voters paying attention, I would say I would have very negative outlook on that. But if people hold the powers that be, their feet to the fire, and say, we've experienced fiscal sanity and we like it, but now it's up to you to demonstrate that that's sustainable for more than just 1 year, when the federal government sent us a whole bunch of money. So you got to resist all those urges to spend money on programs that are not sustainable, that we need to go ahead and continue to look for efficiencies everywhere we can, and that we hold down expenditures to meet revenues that come on in. So that's going to be the real test of whoever the next governor is. The powers that be in the legislature are going to have to demonstrate they're not a one-trick pony, that we got a whole bunch of money, and boy, we're fiscally conservative because we got that money. Can we do it next year, the year after, and the year after? That's what my members want to hear. That's what they want to see, as a real plan for them to go ahead and decide, Illinois may be back on track here.
So our thoughts and our prayers are with Todd's wife Kim and their two boys. It's sad to lose someone too soon, and Todd was just 57. Thanks so much for joining us on our show this week. You can get the newsletter anytime at the Illinoize, that's ILLINOIZE.com. Subscribe to the newsletter there, and keep up on the website as well with stories as they come, and follow us on social media, all that good stuff. We appreciate you taking the time. We'll talk to you next time here on the Illinoize podcast.